If you have somebody that does scheduling and dispatching, well, with adaptive capacity, once you set up the prerequisites, all you have to do is click on get adaptive availability. It's a nice little button and it automatically shows you the next availability.
Welcome to Mastering ServiceTitan, where we get expert advice from power users. I'm your host, Josh Liu, and today I'm here with Zack Kays. Zack is a ServiceTitan Software Consultant at Titan Wizards, and Titan Wizards is a ServiceTitan certified provider, and you can find them in the marketplace. And Zack has been on our show before where we dove really deep into memberships, but today we're diving into adaptive capacity planning. And so Zack, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Happy to be here. We're in a different colored shirt this time, so, the world is crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. I feel like every Pantheon, when I see people again, things shift around. People go to different places and find their calling even more and more. And so it's pretty exciting to see you getting to work with Steve and the team over at Titan Wizards. People listening to this podcast are definitely familiar with Steve. He came on as our very first episode and then came back a few episodes again. And we were super stoked to have you join us again on the podcast.
Fun fact about Steve. The reason why I am a member of the Titan Wizards now is when Steve had his headshot released on LinkedIn, well, I'm part of the Titan Wizards. I was like, he's probably one of the only people out there that knows more about ServiceTitan than I do, and I want to learn from him. So he's one of the reasons why I actually applied for the Titan Wizards, was to follow in Steve's footsteps.
Wow, that is awesome. You guys are definitely wizards when it comes to the product, and I'm really excited to dive into this one because adaptive capacity planning is a relatively new feature. I know we used to have adjustable capacity planning before, which is like the old version. Can you share for those people who haven't heard about what the adaptive version is, how is it different and what is the feature?
Yeah. So adaptive capacity is the new one. It is made to come out to replace adjustable capacity planning. It's the next generation solution for capacity management. It's real time and allows you to set up strategic rules where ACP, the old one, was a little bit more rigid. Adaptive capacity allows you to make it a lot more flexible and dial it into your business and your business's needs.
And what are the benefits of using something like adaptive capacity planning?
So one of the main benefits is, as a scheduler, if you have somebody that does scheduling and dispatching, a lot of the times when they're going to schedule, they also have to look at the dispatch board and they're clicking, trying to find the open day, trying to find the best technician. Well, with adaptive capacity, once you set up the prerequisites, all you have to do is click on get adaptive availability. It's a nice little button and it automatically shows you the next availability. So it speeds up. So say, for example, you're taking 30 calls in the day, it takes you 30 seconds to look at the dispatch board. You're saving that 30 seconds on every single call, getting some more time back in your life for maybe some outbounding and expanding your memberships.
And then from a planning perspective, does it also help you stay booked or not overbooked or underbooked?
Yeah, so there are some rules that you can set up. You can set it based off of your real capacity just to book up to 100%. But you can also go in and set up strategic rules that allow you to only book up to 80% of your preventative maintenance jobs during your busy season. So you always have that 20% left over for demand. I've also seen shops do it where their first arrival window of the day from 8 to 10. That's a free game. Anything can be booked there, but everything else afterwards from 10 to 6 or whatever the end of their arrival windows are, they only allow for demand calls. So that way, if you have a tech that's on commission, he's going to come in, he's going to have pretty much a guaranteed maintenance call, and then he'll get demand calls after that to make sure that they're fed and they have a reason to come into work.
Makes sense. Very cool. It seems like there's a lot of customization we can go into, which we'll dive into the details in a bit. But before we get into all that, can you share maybe some of the prerequisites that ServiceTitan users need to have set up before they can use adaptive capacity?
Yeah, so when you're going in to get it set up, it's very similar to ACP. So you want to make sure that you have your business units set up in a structure that works well. You want to make sure that you have your job types set up in a way that makes sense. You also want to have technician shifts are important. But that's really about it. It's not as granular as ACP was, where ACP had all these rigid requirements. Adaptive capacity allows you to turn it on with basically just business units set up, and then you can dial it in from there. And then arrival windows are also important as well.
And then this one, is this a feature that CSM needs to turn on for you? Like if someone's looking in their account and they don't have it, can a CSM enable this for you?
Yes, yeah. So it is something that a CSM can definitely turn on for you. And there's also some required permissions after the CSM turns it on. So the required permissions that you want to go ahead and get turned on are access, get adaptive availability filters, access adaptive capacity settings, edit adaptive capacity settings, access adaptive capacity rules, edit capacity rules, and apply manual adjustments. You don't need all 6 of those permissions, but that'll be more like the CSR manager or whoever's in charge of capacity should have all 6, where maybe a supervisor could just access them to see what they look like. But ServiceTitan is nice enough that they broke it down to where you can have that access and edit, and it's not just a one permission does all.
Now, for shops that this is all new information, how do most people plan capacity, and what are some of like the problems they run into if they're not using something like this?
So a lot of, I'm sure you've heard the phrase 3-day call board. So a lot of shops do what's called a 3-day call board, where at the end of the day, their dispatcher will run a report to see what jobs are available, what jobs they have on the schedule for the next 3 days. And I've seen people even use like a whiteboard where they'll have the next 3 days structured, and then they'll run that report and they'll just write it down like, oh, okay, we're at this capacity. And sorry, guys, we might call it ACP at least once. The naming structure is a little fun. Adaptive capacity, having that turned on allows you to kind of plan for that 3-day call board without actually having to do that manual work or that checks. And a really nice, cool thing is you do get access to a new section of capacity reporting, which you can see kind of your 3-day call board based off of that capacity reporting as well.
And like you said, it's real time. And so you don't have to constantly manual update something and to stay up to date and get a lot of visibility in real time. So now looking at the setup, just in the prerequisite phase, to me, it sounds like most customers or service time users will have that already set up. Are there any tweaks they should make to have that setup be really good for adaptive capacity?
Yeah, so you definitely want to do like an internal audit, like business unit, job types, arrival windows, skills. You're probably already going to have that set up. So it's really easy to just go ahead and turn it on. The next thing you need to decide is whether or not you're going to do adaptive capacity, the simple setup or the advanced setup. So the simple setup is just doing it based off of business units. Where, for example, you have a service business unit, everybody in your service business unit can run all service jobs. Then you can just assign that service business unit to that technician and you're good to go. Sometimes you might need to take it a step further and use business unit groups if you have service and maintenance, and a tech can do both all service and maintenance jobs that are tied to that business unit. Then set up your business unit group, combine service and maintenance, and you're good to go. But that's not a perfect world. A lot of the times what we find is, yeah, you have your service guys, you have your maintenance guys, and some of them are really good at doing capacitors. Some of them are really good at doing P-traps. Some of them, speaking of plumbing, a lot of people are really good at drains, but the person that's really good at drains might not be good at water heaters. So I really recommend doing the advanced setup. It does take a little bit more time, but what I like to do is I run a report of all the job types that are in ServiceTitan, and then I create a skill for every single one of those job types. You could simplify it by like putting your job types into groups and then doing a skill based off of that group. But I like to just do one-to-one. It's very simple. So you do a job type, a skill, and then you assign that skill to the technician, and then you're done. Call out though is anytime you hire a new technician or a technician advances in your company or advances in their skill set, you do want to make sure that you are going back into their technician profile and adding those additional skills so they can be seen as capacity. Because if you don't add those additional skills, they won't show up for some of those job types. And that brings me to another. We all probably know what business unit groups are because that is an older configuration that's been out for a while. There is actually a new configuration that the CSM also needs to turn on for you. It's called job type groups. So same thing, when you get into the strategic rules, you can actually have job type groups turned on where you can literally, same thing you do with business units, put a bunch of job types into a group, and then you can have a rule affect those job type groups as well.
So let's say someone has these prerequisites set up for the advanced version and they turn on adaptive capacity. What can they expect to happen next once it's turned on?
Once you have it turned on your call screen, immediately after your CSM enables it, you're going to have a new button that you haven't seen before. We're probably all familiar with the either blue get availability link or the blue schedule assistant link. This is a little bit different. It's actually a button. It's not a link. It's a nice little button that you can click on the call screen. That'll bring up the adaptive availability flow, which really nice. It automatically, once you put in the job type, the business unit, the marketing campaign automatically tells you what your next available is. So you can click on that, schedule it right there and then. But if you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that's a little weird. I don't agree with that. If you click on availability details, it will actually tell you why it selected that date, who's available for that date, and it really breaks it down. So there's no mystery. A lot of the times, I feel like that's one. I love Dispatch Pro, but one of the downsides of Dispatch Pro is it's so much behind the curtain. And if you don't roll it out to your team properly, when it doesn't work, they're like, oh, Dispatch Pro sucks. No, you just don't understand what the calculations are going into and what can be tweaked. So this allows your CSRs to click on availability details, kind of see behind the curtain. And it also helps for optimization because if they're like, well, I know this person's supposed to show up for this job, but they're not, they can see why they're not, and they can let their manager know, hey, can you make this small tweak and get that adjusted?
Does it take a while for CSRs and dispatchers, whoever's booking those calls, does it take them a while to get used to this new flow versus how they were doing it before?
It definitely depends. If you are a shop that is always assigning the technician right off the bat, there is a little bit of a workflow change where you're looking for your time slot first because adaptive availability is kind of made to seamlessly transition to Scheduling Pro and Dispatch Pro, where it works best when you are booking the job and leaving the technician unassigned and allowing the dispatcher to then assign that technician based off of that. But you can still, as a scheduler, you are able to, once you hit that get adaptive availability button, there is a technician dropdown and there is a matched and an unmatched section. So if there's a particular technician that you're looking to go do that job type, you can just pick them in the match section and it will automatically put that job on them, business as usual. But that's the biggest hiccup would be you kind of have to decide, are we going to do everything on the side moving forward and let the dispatcher move it? Or Dispatch Pro move it automatically, or are the schedulers going to continue to assign technicians?
So we've got the advanced setup, we've got the new CSR experience and the flow. We mentioned strategic rules a couple times. Can you share a little bit about what strategic rules are and maybe give some ideas of how people can use this feature?
Yeah. So I feel like before we dive into strategic rules, there's a couple prerequisites that you want to look at before we go into that. So under your settings, you can go to adaptive capacity, and then right under adaptive capacity, there's another setting called settings. I know it's great. It's confusing. You'll find it. It's at the very bottom. But there's three different sections in there. You have your basic settings, your advanced settings, and your strategic rules. It is very important. I want to start with the basic settings because the basic settings allow you to, what is largely different between ACP and adjustable capacity is with adjustable capacity, you want to put a shift on every single person that's on the dispatch board, regardless if you want them to be counted for capacity. And the reason why you want to do that is if you take a job off of somebody who has a shift on them and put it on somebody that doesn't have a shift, because adjustable capacity uses real-time planning, it completely throws off the calculation because you're basically taking that job off of one person and putting it onto somebody that it doesn't belong to. And honestly, Josh, ServiceTitan sent me an email about a week ago with this paragraph explanation of why that happens, and I still can't explain it properly. Just take my word for it. Definitely recommend having shifts on everybody. Under the basic setting rules, a few things there. It allows you to uncheck the default to include non-managed technicians. So even though you may have a shift on your non-managed technician, they're not going to show up for capacity. That's best practice. You can also default to include your on-call technician, so that beautiful orange bar that we all use for our on-call technicians, you can actually start to use capacity planning and fill that up as long as the technician that's on call has the skills that are available for that. There's default to include business units in availability calculation, business unit groups, and job type groups are more for the strategic rules. My recommendation is if you're going to do the one-to-one job type skill matchup, shut off the default to include business units because business units no longer matter in that particular situation because everybody else is just going to be looked at for skills. That brings us to our next section, which is the technician exclusions. Very important because you're like, well, I just put shifts on all my installers. I may have had my owner on the dispatch board. He never runs calls. Yeah, just put them in the technician exclusion section. They won't be counted as capacity, but when you do take a job off of somebody that's counted for capacity and onto them, it also doesn't cause that weird recalculation that ServiceTitan does that I can't explain very well, and it'll make sure that your capacity runs very well. Another cool thing, brand new feature just released, is the audit trail. So now you can come in here if you have multiple people that have permissions to change these settings. You can actually see who changed the settings, and maybe you need to yell at them because it didn't work well, or maybe you have to give them a fist bump because it worked really well. Who knows? It could go both ways. So that's the basic settings. The next are the advanced settings. So in the advanced settings, you have the availability threshold, which we may be familiar with from ACP. It was also a feature there where you can set up a default threshold. Say you have an 8 to 10 arrival window, you have a job type that's only 1 hour, so it's taken an 8 to 9. But you don't necessarily want that next job to be at that 9 slot. So you can turn on the availability threshold, maybe put a 30-minute in between those jobs, and it will still book that last job at 8:30. Now, cool thing about adaptive capacity is it looks at arrival windows, but it also looks like at job duration. So say you have that arrival window from 8 to 10, you have that first job type that's only in 1 hour job type. We'll just say you have your 30-minute turned on. So technically the technician's not available till 9:30. It will actually schedule a 2-hour job type in that 9:30 slot and say it's still technically in the 8 to 10 arrival window because your tech should make it. And then it just kind of takes capacity out of the 10 to 12 arrival window. So you're not overbooking your technician, but you are still able to fill up the schedule as quickly as you can. And it allows you to stack things up in those arrival windows, which are really, really cool. In the advanced settings, there's also tag selections. This is a very important spot. So in the strategic rules, it allows you to set up different availability calculations based off of tags, but you have to add them here first. So if you have like a do not service tag or a no heat or a no cool or a high value, all those cool tags, I would definitely add them in here. And I'm sure the project manager is aware of it, but if you add a tag in the tag selection and then go to make a rule, you'll notice that tag doesn't show up in the rules. You have to do a hard refresh like 3 to 4 times for it to actually show up. So if you're setting it up and you're like, I know I saved the tag and it's not in the rules, yeah, do a Control-Shift-R. It'll pop up eventually. You might have to do it 3 or 4 times.
Gotcha. Those are those insider tips that you don't get in the knowledge base. So I'm glad you shared that.
The knowledge base is never going to be like, it doesn't update. The knowledge base is always speaks highly of ServiceTitan, but as much as I love ServiceTitan, it does have these little nuances in it. The next one would be warning for exceeding natural capacity. And I do recommend to have both of those toggles on. What it allows is it allows your CSRs to overbook if needed, keeps the power in their hands, but it also gives them like a little triangle with an exclamation point that says, hey, you're overbooking this. Are you sure you still want to do it? And they can if they communicate with their dispatcher. So it kind of takes the guardrails off a little bit, or you can shut those toggles off and they're very rigid and they have to follow the rules. So one of my favorite strategic rules to set up and to kind of get your feet wet with making them is a do not service rule. We all have tags in our ServiceTitan that's usually do not service. So you can actually set up a rule for it where the rule name would be do not service. You would put it at an ongoing duration. One of the filters is add date and time criteria. So you would click on that. You would do your Sunday through Saturday because you never want to service that person. They're already do not service. You add a tag, then you add a condition, and it's if tag type is do not service, then apply threshold of 0%. The really cool thing about that is if you have a brand new CSR that's not familiar with some of your more colorful clients that you may no longer want to deal with, it'll actually block them from being able to schedule that person. And they will have to raise their hands and talk to either a manager or a supervisor and say, hey, for some reason, Joe Blow, it won't let me schedule it. They're like, oh yeah, that's do not service. And then gives you the opportunity to look at the notes and see, were they do not service 5 years ago? And maybe let's give them a new leaf, or did we just do not service them last week and we're going to stay away from them? So it allows you to kind of set up those rules.
When people implement this, how often are they making tweaks and making adjustments as they go?
So my joke is, especially when you're first setting up adaptive capacity, it is not a George Foreman grill. You don't set it and forget it. It's very similar to Dispatch Pro, where you're coming in to make optimizations. The really nice thing is this is a core product. It's available to everybody. You don't need any pro products to make it work. Does it work nicely with pro products? Sure. But you can literally just use it in the core. Within the first week or so, I would recommend having maybe a bi-weekly meeting just to see what worked well, what didn't work, and make those adjustments from there. The mistakes that I see is people will come in, they'll set all their rules, and they're like, okay, it's set. And then they get mad when it doesn't work and they don't optimize it and they just shut it off completely. And it is a tool that you do need to go in and tweak a little bit. And you also get 3 options for activation periods. So you can set up an ongoing rule where nature of ongoing, it's going on forever and ever, but there's a toggle switch. So you can go into those same rules and you can toggle that rule off. One way you can go in and be like, okay, I don't want this week, but maybe next week I want it on. So toggle it on or off. Another one is fixed date range. Fixed date range is really cool. I'm in Tucson, Arizona. So I know as of like March 1st, it's going to be 110 degrees and it's going to be 110 degrees until October 31st. Probably want to set up a fixed date range rule to control how many preventative maintenance calls I'm doing within that time frame to make sure that we have enough room for demand calls. Last thing that I want, and I've seen it at the shop that I came from, where we would start outbounding in January to get all of our summer PMAs on the board, and then we'd get them on the board, and then come July, we're calling all those people we already scheduled to reschedule them because we don't have room to do them because some elderly lady is in her house and it's 97 degrees and she's dying. So like by doing it this way, it allows you to strategically plan for the future. And it also helps with culture. How many times have you, as a supervisor or manager for a contact center, went to your team and like, all right, guys, we need to outbound. And they work really hard to get those calls on the board. And then a month later, they're spending every single day just rescheduling all the hard work they already did. That kills culture. It really does. As a scheduler in the past, I did it, but it hurt me every time I did it. So it definitely helps with that. And then the last but not least is going to be relative date range. And that's really cool is if you see a weather forecast coming that says there's going to be some sort of cold snap or warm snap coming through, then you can set up a relative date range. So for the next 7 days, that rule will be on. And then after that 7 days, it will shut off.
Wow, there are so many customizations and tweaks you can do. The ongoing like toggle on, toggle off type of rule seems really interesting. And you kind of mentioned this when it comes to seasonality. So for people listening, if they do have a very seasonal business like HVAC, things shift a lot. Are these tweaks that they should basically expect every single time, like their, I guess, demand increases and decreases?
Yeah, so HVAC business, they definitely have swings, but it's also, they have seasonality, but it's also based off of geo. So if you're like in Tucson, Arizona, there's not a lot of winter, there's not a lot of cold, not a lot of furnace season. But if you're like Baltimore, Maryland, where you have all 4 seasons, you're going to get that busy season in the summer. You're also going to get that busy season in the winter, but it's important to be able to strategically plan for those times and make sure that you're not overbooked.
Would you recommend for those businesses, let's say they have those 4 different times where things shift, they basically kind of watch the weather and then as you approach it, you do an audit of all your settings and just make sure you're good to go?
If you're a service manager or you've been in the industry for a while, you kind of know what your seasonality looks like. So I would almost come in and set up a fixed date range rule for that seasonality because it's a lot better to have that rule in place and then just tweak it slightly when the time comes, then go in and be like, oh, shoot, I forgot to turn that rule back on. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks of your busiest seasons filled with PMAs, and it goes back to all your schedulers having to reschedule it.
Are there any other things people should watch out for or any mistakes that you've seen people make that listeners today can avoid ahead of time?
Yeah, so one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen, and we kind of touched on it briefly, was making sure that you have shifts on every single person. Because a lot of the times they're like, well, I don't want them to be seen for adaptive capacity. I'm not going to put a shift on them. And that makes sense. It does. Coming from ACP, that makes sense. So that's one of the things that I've seen. Another one to look out for is your non-job events. Non-job events, you want to make sure that you're either adding that timesheet to it, so you make sure it's taken out of capacity, or there's a checkbox that says remove from a capacity. If you have that checked as well, it'll work. There is a known issue right now. I'm sure they're working on it, and by the time this episode is released, it'll probably be good to go. But if you are using the old non-job events, there is actually a toggle to remove from capacity as well. But that one only works for ACP. For whatever reason, the developers didn't point it to adjustable. So always just use the timesheet. Don't worry about that. Pretend like that checkbox does not exist if you're on the old non-job event. But why wouldn't you be on the new non-job event? It's really cool. I know we're not talking about the new non-job event, but when you turn it on, it actually allows you to customize your non-job events directly on your dispatch board without having to go to another screen, to go to another tab and lose your progress. As of, I think, the most recent release, if you go into your settings, under dispatch, there is new and upcoming features. There's 3 in there. There is the communication center, the new dispatch board, which they removed the wavy lines from, so no more motion sickness, and the new non-job events. I definitely recommend checking them out.
Nice bonus features, and those seem like some quick things people can just update to make their experience better. So we always love those. Is there anyone that should not use adaptive capacity planning? What I'm trying to get at is I'm wondering if this is like a really great fit for certain types of businesses and maybe not the best fit for others.
So I feel like if you're a service in demand, adaptive capacity is perfect for you. It's really geared towards that. If you're new construction, where you're doing large multi-day projects, it's probably not going to work well for you. If you're large commercial where you have large multi-day projects as well, probably not going to work. This is mainly going to be for those service and demand shops that have 1-day jobs. And you can also, if you set it up properly, you can do it for installs. So if you have a comfort advisor go out and sell a new system, you can set up the rules for your installers to see when the next install is available. I know the project manager is probably not going to trust adjustable capacity, and they're just going to look at their weekly dispatch board anyway, but it is something you can set up for install in service as well.
Cool. So yeah, we've covered quite a bit. It seems like adaptive capacity planning is one of those features you can set up and then just continue to get more and more advanced, continue to tweak for your business. For those people, if they're feeling a little overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, there's so much this can do, is there a way that they can just start with it and then add the fancy stuff later?
Oh, absolutely. So the strategic rules, you don't need to set up at all. You can just go in and make sure that you have your shifts set up, make sure you have your job type duration set up and your arrival window set up, and you can get to the races. The advanced rules are just a little bit more fun, a little bit more flavor, but you never need to touch them at all. Another advanced rule that I do like is if you have like a tech that's retiring soon and they only want to run 2 jobs a day, well, you can make that happen. You can say, oh, based off of this time frame, I only want them to show 50% availability, but you don't need to use strategic rules at all. If you're like Zach, I never want to touch strategic rules, but I still want to have some control of my schedule, then use adaptive capacity and just block things off in non-job events. You can still, just like you would in the past with ACP, you can still go ahead and put the gray block, as shops lovingly call them, on their technician to kind of create your own strategic rules that way as well.
So it sounds like it's one of those features that most people have the prerequisites set up for. They can toggle on adaptive capacity planning and then make sure their CSRs just know there's a new flow to find those times. And then from there, you can tweak it as you go and start getting more advanced. So yeah, if you're listening and you're like, wow, this can do so much, don't worry. You can always start small and then add on extra capability later, it seems. Not to overcomplicate things, but I know we have AI voice agents at ServiceTitan. I know there's a lot of third-party voice agents as well. How does adaptive capacity planning interact with those like voice agents that are doing some booking?
That's a good call out. Very important. So if you are using the new AI voice agents that are available with Contact Center Pro, and fun fact, they're also available with basic phones as well. If you go into your settings, you'll see a section that says AI voice agents. But with the native ServiceTitan AI agents, they use all the adaptive capacity rules. Any of the strategic rules that you'll set up, they'll be able to recognize that because the ServiceTitan AI agents are native, built directly in the platform, so they can see all that stuff. If you do use a third party, Broccoli, Avoca, Same Day, ZyraTalk, sorry if I missed any. They're all great. They all do kind of the same thing, but they have different voices, different dashboards, is what I tell people. You can go ahead and you'll still need ACP turned on because those ones actually look at ACP and not adaptive capacity. But all the stuff that you do for ACP, setting up your arrival window, setting up your business unit, setting up your skills, all talk to ACP. You just won't have the strategic rules. But a lot of those third parties, they do have their own dashboards where you can go into those dashboards and set up the strategic rules there. You just have to do double data entry, but you can still get this set up.
Gotcha. So with the ServiceTitan AI voice agents, it's already built in. And then for any third parties, you just have it's pointed to the old version of adjustable capacity. Got it. And then some of the additional settings you can set up within the third parties themselves. And then I know ServiceTitan AI voice agents, I believe it's standalone as well now. And so you don't need it on Contact Center Pro. You can get them just on their own. Which is pretty cool. Anything else that I missed? We kind of dove really deep into this feature, which is great, but anything I missed that I should have asked?
So there's the new capacity reporting section. This is really cool. It allows you to either do simple or advanced reporting. I recommend doing advanced if you're going to be doing the one-to-one skill job type mapping. And then there is the setup hierarchy. So what the setup hierarchy allows you to do is filter between like how you wanted to have it set up. So most people do business units, then skill, then job type. I would recommend following that. So that way you can kind of see what your availability is on a business unit level, on a job type level, and on a skill level. You can also add teams in there. If you do turn on job type grouping, you can have job type grouping there as well.
Wow. So even more and better reporting that comes with all these capabilities. Very cool.
Yeah. And then a little call out is when you first go into it, it is set to show you the timeframes based off your business hours. Please drop that down to your arrival windows because there's not too many people that use business hours inside of ServiceTitan. And so arrival windows is the setting you'd want to have it on. Technician shifts is also important. And fun fact is when you're setting up shifts, you want to be very careful because if you set them out too far and you make a mistake, it's kind of annoying to go back in and delete them. But if you filter via technician, so say, for example, you have like 5 technicians on your technician shift screen. If you mass delete, it'll only mass delete those 5 technicians. I know it seems scary. I tested it. It works. Because the last thing you want to do is kind of mass delete your entire schedule and have to go back. And yeah, especially if you're a shop that actually uses the time off shifts as well, it can be kind of a pain to go in and put all John's at university. This person has a doctor's appointment, all that stuff. Get that back in there. So you just want to be careful when you're doing the technician shifts.
Cool tip as well to watch out for. Anything else?
Definitely use the knowledge base. If you have questions regarding like what the difference between adaptive capacity and ACP in the adaptive capacity FAQ, it actually has a nice little chart where it'll show what it can do and what it can do. And I know you guys can't see the screen I'm looking at, but the ACP has a lot of red X's next to it, meaning that it's not capable, where adaptive capacity has a bunch of green check marks. So it allows for that. And one thing that we missed, pretty cool feature too with adaptive capacity, is you can use zones now. If you're one of those shops that actually has zones set up in a way where a technician only works in a certain zone, you can use that as a scheduling factor. So not only is it looking to see the next time that a technician with that skill is available, but also when that technician's going to be in that same zone to help with drive time as well.
Wow, there's so much you can do with adaptive capacity planning. I did not expect like all the layers of additional functionality and customization that comes with it. So I'm glad that you're covering this because it just shows people listening the possibilities. And I think that's a big thing with this podcast is we do want to cover just like everything that's possible with ServiceTitan. Doesn't mean it's everything you have to implement, but it's good to know that it's there in the back of your head. But yeah, want to remind people we can start simple and then start to layer these things in as you go.
If you do use Scheduling Pro, the new colorful widget, make sure after setting up adaptive capacity that you go into your widget settings and change it from, you probably have it currently set to ACP. change it from ACP to adaptive capacity so that your scheduling online widget can start to recognize your new scheduling capabilities. And that will also trickle over to your LSA and your Google My Business book online buttons as well.
Gotcha. Wow, Zach, you are very thorough. I can see why they love having you at Titan Wizards. And just to wrap up, I did want to ask you to share a little bit about Titan Wizards. I know it's a relatively newer team in terms of getting everyone together. When did you guys join forces again?
So I joined the Titan Wizards back in May. I was actually their third hire. So it's Ryan and Tippy, the owner and CEO, husband and wife team, great people. And I was right after Steve. I came on board. And what makes Titan Wizards unique is not only do we look for people that are ServiceTitan experts, but that's not good enough. If all you know is ServiceTitan, if you can speak on ServiceTitan, that's awesome. But to be quite honest, we don't care. We want to make sure that not only can you speak on ServiceTitan, but you can also speak on the trades. You have to be somebody that's come from the home service shop. Like Steve, we all know he has 13 years of experience. We have Rebecca on our team now, who's been in ServiceTitan for a while. She's done a couple onboarding and implementations, actually working for shops, operations manager. We have Miranda on our team now, who also comes from a shop. So everybody that we bring on comes from a shop. I really love everything ServiceTitan. You know that from interacting with me. But one of the unique benefits of being a software consultant that specializes in ServiceTitan is different verticals. For example, one of our clients is irrigation, which is new to me. So I'm like, all right, cool, irrigation, let's learn that. Diving more into roofing clients, spec-based templates are fun. They're a beast, but they're also fun. And then just getting to know people. I have clients in the States. I have clients in Canada. I have a client in Australia. So getting to know what ServiceTitan can do in the States that it can't do in Canada, which that's pretty much a one-to-one, but there are some small things. But for Australia, there's a lot of things that ServiceTitan can't do in Australia that it can do in the States. So trying to figure out those nuances and making sure when you're talking to that client, not recommending like, hey, you can set up text message notifications because they can't. There's no texting in Australia. So you have to be careful of the things that you mentioned.
That is awesome. Titan Wizards is so lucky to have you. Someone who's so passionate into diving into like every detail and truly mastering ServiceTitan. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. And for people who are interested in working with Titan Wizards, check them out in the marketplace, ServiceTitan Marketplace. You guys are a ServiceTitan certified provider. And it would be awesome if anyone needs help with anything we talked about today or really any future, they can help with that. And so, Zach, yeah, thanks again for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah, no problem. To piggyback off of that, not only can you find us in the marketplace, but me, myself personally, so Titan Wizards, we are a certified provider, kind of have to be talk to ServiceTitan clients, but then we also have to get our own certifications. So I am personally a certified coach, a certified commercial, certified construction, and it's not my best topic. That's what we got Steve for, but I'm also certified in inventory as well. So those are the 4 badges that I hold. Another member of our team is currently working on the accounting certification, and I'm currently working on the marketing certification. So it's our goal to have every STCP badge that's available, which will make us even better for our clients.
Awesome, Zach. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and we will catch you all on the next episode.